Another criminal trespassing where he doesn't belong. Officer Brennan shoved Marcus Johnson hard against the fence of his own property, scattering the landscaping plans from his hands. The officer's knee pressed painfully into Marcus's back as another squad car pulled up, lights flashing. 3 neighbors had their phones out recording everything, while Marcus maintained his composure despite the assault. "I've told you I own this property," Marcus said calmly, his face pressed against the cold metal fence. "My ID and property deed are in my back pocket." "Shut up, I'm tired of you people making excuses," Officer Brennan growled, twisting Marcus's arm higher behind his back. "This is an upscale neighborhood, and someone like you doesn't just own 5 acres here. Have you ever witnessed someone being punished for simply existing in a space others decided they didn't belong in? Have you ever seen justice so twisted that the victim becomes the criminal in the eyes of those sworn to protect? If you want to see what happens when power meets prejudice, and how sweet justice can be when the tables turn, keep watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more stories of justice served 2 hours earlier. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. Marcus Johnson, 45, reached over and silenced it before it could wake the entire house. The smell of coffee already filled the air. He'd set the timer the night before. NPR played softly from the kitchen, reporting on the latest congressional hearings. Marcus moved quietly through his spacious bedroom. The walls were lined with family photos, his parents at their 50th wedding anniversary, his late wife Catherine smiling from their wedding day, his daughter Zoe in her college graduation gown. Catherine had passed away 3 years ago from breast cancer, leaving Marcus to raise their daughter alone through her final years of college. In the kitchen, he poured his coffee and glanced at Zoe's latest text. "Dad, good luck with the contractors today. Love you." His daughter, now 24, had followed in his footsteps and joined the Justice Department after graduating from Georgetown. Marcus sipped his coffee while reviewing blueprints spread across the kitchen island. Today was important. The contractors were finally breaking ground on the community center he was building on the rural property he'd purchased 6 months ago. The 5-acre plot sat on the edge of Oakwood Hills, an affluent suburb of Washington, D.C. The community center would provide after-school programs, job training, and resources for underserved youth from neighboring communities. His neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, waved from her garden as Marcus stepped outside to collect the newspaper. "Big day today, isn't it, Marcus?" she called. "Yes, ma'am," he replied with a warm smile. "Contractors should be here by noon." "Well, we're all looking forward to seeing what you do at the place. The neighborhood association is behind you 100%. Marcus nodded appreciatively. He'd spent 3 months attending neighborhood meetings, presenting his plans, addressing concerns, and ultimately winning approval for his project. Most neighbors had been supportive once they understood his vision, though a few had voiced thinly veiled objections that made their prejudice clear. Back inside, Marcus dressed carefully in khaki pants and a navy polo shirt, casual enough for a construction site, but professional enough for the meetings that would follow. His government-issued phone remained face down on the counter, silently collecting notifications from his team. A news segment played in the background, mentioning an ongoing federal investigation into corruption among local police departments. The reporter mentioned FBI special agent in charge, but Marcus wasn't paying attention as he gathered his paperwork. Inside his briefcase, partially visible under site plans, lay his FBI credentials. For 15 years, Marcus had served as a special agent, working his way up to lead the Civil Rights Division's law enforcement misconduct investigations in the D.C. field office. His current investigation targeted corruption in 3 county police departments surrounding D.C., including Oakwood Hills. He tucked his badge deeper into his briefcase. Today was personal business, not FBI work. His plans showed the center would include a memorial garden dedicated to Catherine, who had devoted her life to youth advocacy before her illness. Marcus checked his watch, 10:45 a.m. He had just enough time to visit the property and take final measurements before the contractors arrived. He deliberately chose to drive through downtown Oakwood Hills. Though it added 10 minutes to his journey, he wanted to establish his presence in the community, where some still viewed him with suspicion. The stakes felt higher than usual today. After 6 months of planning, permits, and preparation, his dream was finally becoming reality. The community center would be Catherine's legacy. Zoe had already volunteered to run summer programs once it opened. Marcus pulled into the property's gravel drive at 11:20 a.m. He had 40 minutes before the contractors would arrive. The land stretched before him, 5 acres of possibility. He stepped out of his SUV, blueprints tucked under his arm, and began to pace the boundaries where the foundation would soon be laid. He didn't notice the patrol car slowly driving past, or the officer inside watching him with suspicion. Officer James Brennan had been with the Oakwood Hills Police Department for 12 years. He'd watched the community transform from a middle-class suburb to an exclusive enclave of million-dollar homes. He considered himself the unofficial guardian of property values, keeping undesirables from loitering in a neighborhood where they clearly didn't belong. When he spotted a black man walking around the vacant lot on Maple Ridge Drive, measuring and taking notes, his suspicions immediately flared. He radioed dispatch. Unit 47, checking on possible trespasser at 1520 Maple Ridge. African-American male, 40S, appears to be casing the vacant property. Brennan pulled to the curb and approached Marcus, hand resting casually on his holster. "Excuse me, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" Brennan called out. Marcus turned, blueprints in hand. "Good morning, officer. I'm just taking some final measurements before my contractors arrive." "This is private property. Do you have permission to be here?" Brennan's tone made clear he already assumed the answer was no. "I own this property," Marcus replied calmly, reaching for his wallet. "I'd be happy to show you my ID." Brennan's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart with me. We've had reports of people casing properties in this area." "I'm not getting smart, officer. I'm simply telling you I own this land. I purchased it 6 months ago." A second patrol car pulled up. Officer Melissa Cooper stepped out and approached. "What's going on, James?" she asked, eyeing Marcus suspiciously. "Says he owns the place," Brennan scoffed, acting suspicious, walking the perimeter like he's planning something. "I was taking measurements for the foundation," Marcus explained, holding up the blueprints. "The contractors will be here any minute." "Let me see those," Cooper demanded, snatching the papers from Marcus's hands. "These look fake. Anyone can print official-looking documents." "I assure you they're legitimate," Marcus said. "The neighborhood association approved the plans 3 months ago." "I smell marijuana," Brennan suddenly announced, though Marcus knew there was none. "That gives us probable cause to search you." Marcus's patience was wearing thin, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "Officer, I do not consent to a search. I have not broken any laws and there is no marijuana present. I'd like to speak with your supervisor." "You match the description of a suspect we've been looking for," Cooper added, completely fabricating a reason for their harassment. "Several break-ins in the area by a man of your description." A neighbor walking her dog slowed down to watch. She pulled out her phone and began recording. 2 more residents from across the street noticed the patrol cars and came outside, phones in hand. "What's going on?" one called out. "Police business," Brennan shouted back. "Move along." But they didn't move. Instead, more neighbors gathered. Some recognized Marcus from the neighborhood meetings. The small crowd grew from 5 to 15 people. Marcus noticed a teenager starting an Instagram live stream. The counter showed 47 viewers and climbing. "Turn around and put your hands against the fence," Brennan ordered, his patience evaporating as the audience grew. "I'd like to show you my identification first," Marcus insisted calmly. That's when Brennan grabbed Marcus's arm, spinning him around and slamming him against the fence that bordered his own property. The blueprints scattered across the ground, some blowing away in the breeze. "Ah, he's resisting!" Brennan shouted, though Marcus had done nothing of the sort. Cooper moved in, zip-tying Marcus's hands behind his back while Brennan conducted a rough pat-down, deliberately emptying all of Marcus's pockets onto the ground. His wallet, keys, phone, and property documents scattered in the dirt. "Check this out," Cooper said, picking up Marcus's wallet and examining his driver's license. "Marcus Johnson. Address is in Southeast D.C., not here. He doesn't live here." "I never said I lived here," Marcus clarified, wincing as the zip ties cut into his wrists. "This is my investment property where I'm building a community center. All the paperwork is right there on the ground." Brennan kicked the papers aside. "Sure it is. And I'm the president." A neighbor called out, "He's telling the truth. Those plans were approved months ago. Stay back." Cooper warned the growing crowd, now numbering over 30 people. Brennan keyed his radio. Need additional units at 1520 Maple Ridge. Growing crowd, potential interference with an arrest. He then deliberately scraped his arm against the rough fence, tearing his uniform sleeve and drawing a small amount of blood. Suspect damaged my arm during resistance, he announced loudly, making sure the crowd heard. Adding assault on an officer to the charges. The Instagram live stream counter had jumped to 2,500 viewers. Comments flooded in, most expressing outrage at what they were witnessing. A third patrol car arrived. Sergeant Wilson approached, surveying the scene. "What's the situation?" he asked Brennan. Trespasser claimed he owned the property, became combative when questioned, resisted arrest and caused this. Brennan displayed his scraped arm. Found these suspicious blueprints that look like plans for the property. Marcus addressed the sergeant directly. "Sir, I'm Marcus Johnson. I do own this property. My identification and deed are on the ground where your officers threw them. I'm being detained for being on my own land." Wilson looked uncertain, especially with the growing crowd of witnesses and the multiple phones recording everything. "He smells like marijuana," Brennan insisted, doubling down. "And he matches a suspect description." The Instagram live stream now showed 7,000 viewers. Local news had picked up the story, with a reporter and cameraman arriving at the scene. The crowd had swelled to over 50 people, many calling out that they knew Marcus from neighborhood meetings. At that moment, a truck with Johnson Community Center Construction painted on the side pulled up. The contractor stepped out, confused by the police presence. "Mr. Johnson," he called, "we had an appointment at noon to break ground." Sergeant Wilson was starting to look uncomfortable with the situation. The evidence was mounting that his officers had made a serious error in judgment. The contractor's arrival added credibility to Marcus's claims, and several neighbors were now vocally supporting him. Marcus's government-issued phone, which had been kicked aside during the search, began to ring loudly. The screen lit up with Director Evans, FBI headquarters, and the FBI seal as the caller ID. A neighbor who had been filming pointed her camera at the phone. "His phone says FBI director calling." Cooper bent down and looked at the phone, her face draining of color. "Sarge, you need to see this." Wilson examined the phone, then looked at Marcus with new eyes. "Uncuff him, now." "But, Sarge," Brennan started to protest. "Now," Wilson barked. As Cooper cut the zip ties, Wilson picked up the phone and answered the call, putting it on speaker. "This is Sergeant Wilson, Oakwood Hills Police Department." "This is FBI Director Thomas Evans. I'm calling for Special Agent in Charge Marcus Johnson. Why are you answering his phone?" The authoritative voice echoed across the suddenly silent scene. "Sir, there's been a situation here. Put Agent Johnson on immediately." Wilson handed the phone to Marcus, who was rubbing his wrists where the zip ties had cut into his skin. "Director, this is Johnson." "Marcus, you missed our 12:15 check-in. Everything all right?" "No, sir, it's not. I'm currently being detained by Oakwood Hills Police on my property, where I'm building Catherine's Community Center. Officers Brennan and Cooper handcuffed me for trespassing on my own land. We have multiple witnesses and several live streams recording the incident." The silence that followed was deafening. "I see." Director Evans's voice was cold as ice. "Sergeant Wilson, am I correct in understanding that your officers have detained and handcuffed the FBI special agent in charge of the Civil Rights Division for the D.C. Field Office? The man leading the federal investigation into police misconduct in your region, including your department?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Instagram live stream counter ticked past 56,000 viewers. Wilson's face went pale. "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. Federal agents are en route. They will arrive in approximately 5 minutes. Your officers are to remain on scene. This incident will now be included in our ongoing investigation. I suggest you check Agent Johnson's credentials, which I'm sure your officers properly examined before detaining a federal agent." Marcus bent down and picked up his FBI credentials from inside his scattered briefcase, flipping open the leather wallet to reveal his badge and ID card. "Special Agent in Charge, FBI Civil Rights Division," he announced, holding it up for all the cameras to see. Someone in the crowd shouted, "That's the FBI agent in charge! The one they just mentioned on the news, investigating police corruption." The live stream erupted with comments, viewer count now surpassing 100,000. "Oh my God! Swing!" Someone else yelled, phones raised higher among the spectators, everyone trying to capture the moment when the truth was revealed. Brennan and Cooper stood frozen, the color drained from their faces as they realized the magnitude of their error. "Officer Brennan," Marcus said, his voice steady and professional despite the situation, "you might want to explain the self-inflicted injury on your arm that you're attempting to blame on me. The FBI is particularly interested in false reports by officers." 3 black government SUVs with tinted windows roared up the street, followed by 2 unmarked police cruisers. They screeched to a halt at the property entrance, and 8 FBI agents emerged, led by Assistant Director Catherine Rivera. The agents quickly established a perimeter, moving the crowd back while keeping the officers contained. Rivera approached Marcus, her expression a mixture of concern and professional detachment. "Agent Johnson, are you all right?" she asked, examining the marks on his wrists. "I'm fine, Catherine," he replied. "Just another day being black in America." She nodded grimly, then turned to Sergeant Wilson. "I need to see all body camera footage immediately. Where is your commanding officer?" "Captain Reynolds is on his way," Wilson replied, his voice unsteady. Rivera held up her FBI credentials. "I'm Assistant Director Catherine Rivera. These officers are now part of a federal investigation into civil rights violations. Please surrender your weapons and badges to my agents," Brennan balked. "You can't do that. We were just doing our job." "Your job," Marcus said quietly, "is to protect and serve, not to fabricate charges, falsify evidence, and violate the civil rights of a citizen or a federal agent based on the color of their skin." Rivera nodded to her agents, who approached Brennan and Cooper. "James Brennan and Melissa Cooper, please surrender your firearms and badges. You are not under arrest at this time, but you are being detained for questioning in relation to a federal civil rights investigation." As the officers reluctantly handed over their equipment, a news van from the local NBC affiliate pulled up. The story was growing by the minute. Captain Reynolds arrived, his face ashen as he surveyed the scene. He immediately approached Marcus and Rivera. "Agent Johnson, I want to personally apologize for this incident. I assure you these officers don't represent the values of our department." Marcus regarded him coolly. "Captain, your department has received 17 complaints of racial profiling in the past year alone. 8 of those complaints named Officer Brennan specifically. None resulted in disciplinary action." The captain's eyes widened. "How did you—" "It's my job to know," Marcus replied. "Our investigation has been ongoing for 6 months. Today just added another incident to the file, one with dozens of witnesses and video evidence." Agent Tanner approached with a tablet. "Sir, I've accessed the department database. Officer Brennan has 23 use-of-force complaints, 19 involving minorities. Officer Cooper has 11. Captain Reynolds has dismissed all of them without investigation." The crowd, which now numbered well over 100 people, murmured in shock. The live stream counter showed 215,000 viewers witnessing the revelation in real time. More media vans arrived. CNN, Fox News, and local stations set up cameras. The story had gone national. The police chief, Bernard Matthews, pushed through the crowd, sweat beading on his forehead despite the mild temperature. "Agent Johnson, Chief Matthews," he said, extending his hand, which Marcus didn't take. "I've just been briefed on this unfortunate situation. I want to assure you this doesn't reflect our department's policies." "Actually, Chief," Marcus replied, "our investigation suggests it reflects them perfectly. Your department has systematically ignored complaints of racial profiling and excessive force, particularly in affluent neighborhoods where officers are instructed to stop suspicious individuals who don't belong." Matthews paled. "That's not true. We have the internal memos, Chief, and testimony from officers within your department who were brave enough to come forward." Assistant Director Rivera gathered the officers, chief and captain, in a semicircle, making sure the news cameras could capture the moment. "In my capacity as Assistant Director of the FBI Civil Rights Division, I am informing you that Officers James Brennan and Melissa Cooper are under investigation for the following federal violations: deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U. SS 2212, conspiracy against rights, 18 U.S.C. SS 2241, assault on a federal official, 18 U.S.C. SS 111, false imprisonment, evidence tampering, 18 U.S.C. SS 1519, hate crime enhancement, 18 U.S.C. SS 249. Additionally, Sergeant Wilson, Captain Reynolds, and Chief Matthews are under investigation for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and pattern or practice violations under 34 U.S.C. S. 12601. The officers stood in stunned silence as the gravity of the situation sank in. These weren't minor infractions that would disappear with paid leave. These were serious federal charges that carried years in prison. Brennan's face drained of all color. His legs visibly trembled as he realized the consequences of his actions. "Please," he whispered, barely audible. "I have a family, a wife and 2 kids. You should have thought about them before violating my civil rights," Marcus replied evenly. "Before violating the rights of countless others who didn't have FBI credentials to protect them." Cooper began to sob openly. "I was just following his lead. I didn't know." "That's the problem," Marcus cut her off. "You did know. You chose to ignore it." Chief Matthews attempted one last defense. "This is one isolated incident. Our investigation has documented 147 similar incidents in your department over the past 3 years, Rivera interjected. "This isn't isolated, it's systematic." The officer's colleagues began to distance themselves, physically stepping away as if proximity alone might implicate them. "I didn't know," Brennan whispered again, his face crumpling as the realization of his situation fully hit him. 3 months later, the federal courthouse was packed to capacity. Journalists filled the press section, notebooks and tablets ready as the judge entered the courtroom. Marcus sat in the witness stand, his posture perfect, his voice clear as he testified about the events of that May afternoon. "And when Officer Brennan claimed you had assaulted him, what actually happened?" the prosecutor asked. "Had likely deliberately scraped his own arm against the fence, then claimed I had caused the injury during a non-existent resistance," Marcus replied. Video evidence played on screens throughout the courtroom, footage from neighbors' phones, Instagram live streams, and security cameras from a house across the street. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury took only 4 hours to return their verdict, guilty on all counts. Judge Harrington looked down at Brennan and Cooper from the bench. "The court has found you guilty of serious violations of federal law. Your actions represent the worst kind of abuse of power, targeting a citizen based solely on race, fabricating evidence, and violating civil rights while wearing a badge that should symbolize justice." The sentence came down: 12 years in federal prison for Brennan, 8 years for Cooper. The captain, sergeant, and chief had all taken plea deals in exchange for testimony, receiving 5-year sentences with the possibility of parole. 6 months later, Marcus stood at a podium before Congress, testifying about the need for police reform. "The Johnson Protocol is already showing promising results," he explained to the Judiciary Committee. "In departments where it has been implemented, complaints of racial profiling have decreased by 67%. Public trust in law enforcement has increased by 89%. The statistics appeared on screens behind him. 3,000 officers retrained nationwide, 52 officers terminated for violations, civilian oversight boards established in 127 cities, the Johnson Protocol, named after Marcus-mandated body cameras that couldn't be turned off, civilian review of all use-of-force incidents, and federal penalties for officers who falsified reports or evidence. The architect of the Oakwood Hills Police Department's downfall was now reshaping policing across America. CNN showed footage of Brennan in an orange jumpsuit being led into federal prison. His wife had filed for divorce the week after his conviction. His police union had disavowed him, calling his actions contrary to the oath we all take. Marcus completed his testimony and stepped down from the podium to applause from committee members on both sides of the aisle. 1 year later, the Katherine Johnson Community Center stood completed on the 5-acre property in Oakwood Hills. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a garden where children played. Inside, classrooms offered after-school programs, job training, and community resources. Marcus walked through the main hall, now lined with awards and recognition. A framed newspaper headline read, "FBI agent transforms police misconduct into national reform." Another showed the moment of revelation when his FBI credentials were revealed. His daughter Zoe, now working for the Justice Department, led a program teaching teenagers about civil rights and the legal system. "The greatest lesson from what happened here," Marcus told a group of visitors touring the center, "is that justice sometimes requires us to stand firm in the face of injustice, to document everything, and to use the system to correct itself." A memorial garden dedicated to Catherine bloomed with flowers in the center's courtyard. A plaque read, "Justice blooms where we plant the seeds of accountability." Families from all backgrounds filled the center. Exactly the vision Marcus had planned from the beginning. The neighborhood that had once been exclusive was now a model of inclusion and community engagement. A teacher led a group of students through an exhibit about the incident that had sparked national change. "This is why we always stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult," she told them. "One person can change the system if they're brave enough to try." Marcus paused at a window overlooking the garden. His phone buzzed with a notification. Another department had adopted the Johnson Protocol, the 50th this month. The community center had become both a local resource and a national symbol. Tours came through weekly to learn about police reform and community building. In a final twist of irony, the Oakwood Hills Police Department, now under entirely new leadership with federal oversight, used the Center for Community Outreach and Officer Training on Civil Rights and Implicit Bias. The news that evening featured a segment on the one-year anniversary of the Johnson incident that had transformed American policing. Statistics showed complaints down nationwide, trust rebuilding between communities and law enforcement, and a new generation of officers being trained with accountability as their primary duty. Marcus Johnson stood at the entrance of the center as the sun set, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. What had begun as a traumatic experience had transformed into a catalyst for change that would protect countless citizens from similar abuses. "The system only works when we hold it accountable," he told a documentary filmmaker recording his story. "My FBI credentials saved me that day, but my commitment is to those who don't have a badge to protect them." He looked directly into the camera for a final thought. If this story moved you, if you believe in accountability and justice, please like and subscribe to see more stories of systemic change. Together we can build a world where no one is criminalized for existing in their own space, where officers serve communities rather than intimidate them, and where justice truly is for all. The Catherine Johnson Community Center's lights glowed warmly against the darkening sky, a beacon of what was possible when justice prevailed.